This video is going to introduce you to some top tips for revising using post-its, pictures and PCs. By using post-its, pictures and PCs, you can use visual aids to make your learning more effective for revising. Visual aids make your memory work a bit more effectively and therefore a good tool to use when revising. Visual aids can be flexible, accessible, time-saving and motivational. So today what we're going to do is to go through how you could use images such as mind maps to help your revising be more effective. By using various different types of post-its, you can create visual images and learning aids that you can post around the house in various parts of your flat, on the back of your bathroom door, on your fridge, on the microwave, places where you're going to see them every day. The post-its come in various different sizes and can be used for lots of different purposes. So you can use post-it notes just as standard block notes like these. But they also come in various different sizes, so these larger ones can be better for putting on more information. They also come in lots of different colours, so that if you want, you could actually use different colours for putting on different bits of module information. There's also post-it notes like these, which have pointer indexes on as well, so that you can just use them to annotate existing notes that you might already have that you've taken from lectures. You can also use post-it notes to create to-do lists as well, so that you can put on their tick lists of things that you know you need to do in the run-up to your exams. Pictures are a really useful way of helping you to revise more effectively. A picture says 1,000 words, so if you actually create an image of something, it's going to be easier for you to remember and recall in the exam than it would be if you'd just written down pages and pages of notes. A really good way of getting lots of information onto a visual image is by creating a mind map such as this one that's on here. Mind maps can be very individual. You don't have to be a great artist to do them. They just have to be useful for you. But putting in images, even if they're ridiculous images that nobody else may know what they are, it really doesn't matter because the mind map and the visual images are for you and your revision. Photos are also another useful way of giving you visual information that you'll be able to recall much more easily when you come to the exams. And equally, watching a film or video of something that is on your syllabus in terms of what you need to be revising could again be a more effective way of revising than reading copious pages in a textbook. Adding colour to any of the images that you use, whether it's through the post-it notes or in terms of the colour within the mind maps, is a really useful way of helping to code information and also makes it much more pleasant. And your mind likes to remember things that are pleasant, and therefore colourful images are more likely to be remembered. Using your computer, whether it's a laptop, a Mac or a desktop PC, is really useful for keeping your notes on. You can even create those mind maps that I was talking about previously using free software that's available. And I'll give you a link at the end so you can access that free software. You can make your notes and you can voice record those rather than necessarily having to type them out all the time. And using your computer also means that you can manipulate the notes that you're doing, so you may not necessarily be revising in the order in which you actually will be wanting to learn the information. You might be a bit more haphazard. But at least if you're putting those notes on the computer, you can then move them around and put them in a more logical order at a later date rather than worrying about that at the point of doing the revision. You can do plenty of research, and using Wikipedia or other such internet sites is sometimes a useful starting point. It may not necessarily be recommended for actually doing your course content, but it's useful to get an overview by using internet searches to just at least get you started so that you've got an overview of the whole module that you might be working on. Open source software is also another useful tool to use. Things like the mind mapping software that I've already mentioned, but also text reading software can be available on open source access. That means that instead of actually having to read copious notes, you can actually get the computer to read those notes for you. Again, the link at the end will provide you with where to go to access that particular software. A good starting point is actually to try and get an overview of a small section of your course. So take one module. Maybe have a look at some videos, have a look at some internet searches to get an overview, as I mentioned before. Using a mind mapping technique, you can actually start putting down some notes about what you already know on that topic. And then you can have a look back through your lecture notes to see where you maybe have gaps in your existing knowledge and you might need to do a bit of more in-depth revision on those areas. Make sure that you select texts that are appropriate for your purpose. There's not much point in going to an in-depth textbook if you don't actually need that much information. Don't get bogged down with thinking that you need to read a whole module handbook or whole textbook in order to revise effectively. Think about what you already know and what you don't know, and fill in the gaps with what you don't know, or where you may need more detail. Make sure you read with a purpose. Don't just think, I've got half an hour to do some revision and sit down with a book. Think about what you need to find out. Go in and ask yourself some questions about what you want to extract from the text that you're reading. Be active about your revision. If you can, revise with somebody else. It's another area where you might use your computer, because you may be revising from home rather than from where you are at university. Use something like Skype so that you can have conversations with people who are also on your course, so you can discuss any aspects that maybe you weren't so clear about before. Make sure you take notes as you're revising. You don't necessarily have to rewrite all of your notes from your lectures, but you could just use the post-its to add additional notes on. Maybe put markers on there about where you might need to go and look for some more information if it was an area that you weren't perhaps particularly clear on the first time around. Use the free software that I've mentioned. And make sure that you recognise and support yourself if you experience visual stress. Visual stress is where you find it tiring to read for any amount of time, and that will be exacerbated if you're tired or you've had too much to drink the night before. You can again use software to help alleviate the visual stress, and use computers to help reduce the glare on screens so that you may be able to read for longer. If you have to stop reading after 20 minutes because of eye strain or visual stress, then you're not going to get much revision done. So try and reduce that as much as possible using things like coloured overlays, coloured backgrounds, changing font types, and making sure that you haven't got glaring lighting that's going to make the visual stress worse. How to manage your revision. Time management is definitely the key to success. Make sure that you keep your balance correct when you're doing your revising. It's not going to be useful to revise for a 3-hour block and then just resent the fact that you haven't been able to go out with your friends to the cinema. Shift your balance between social activities and your academic studying. But do bear in mind that in the lead up to exams, you probably want to be reducing some of your social activity, just to be realistic. Be independent, because nobody else is going to do your revision for you. You will need to set your own targets and set your own goals and timetables. Be aware of how you learn best. Some of us learn really well listening to music whilst revising, but for other people that can be more of a distraction. If you are listening to music, make sure you're listening to something that's really familiar, because if you're listening to a new piece of music, then you're probably going to be paying more attention to that music rather than to the revision task. Make sure you set yourself realistic targets for revising. Bear in mind that you may well still have coursework that needs to be submitted during the period in the run-up to the exams. Make sure you start revising well in advance. It may well be that you're still attending lectures and you're still handing in work, but you could maybe still manage half an hour or an hour slots of revising in the run-up to the exams. Start early, don't leave it all till the last minute. Make sure that you split the tasks up into manageable chunks. And prioritise. You could use a coding system, a colour coding system like traffic light colours, in order to prioritise what you need to do. Make sure that you are identifying those areas that you're weaker on rather than the ones you're stronger on. The temptation is often to revise those things that we're comfortable with already, but the problem is those are probably not the things that you really should be revising. You need to revise those bits that you found difficult previously. Make sure that you set yourself a routine that works well for you. Be realistic and work backwards from the deadlines that you have. Make sure that you're setting up a timetable where you're revising for each of your exams and not just working back from the one that you've got next. And finally, just a few extra revision tips. Think about the end goal. Think about what it is that you want to achieve by doing your revision. In other words, I need to pass this exam in order to move on to the next year. Or I need to get a good grade in this in order to get a 2-1 or a first. Get to the job of revision. Don't waste time just thinking about it. And don't waste time just creating lots and lots of timetables and lists. Get on and do it. Make it active. Your revision notes and any of your additional pieces of note-taking don't need to be neat and tidy. They're there for your own purpose. So just get on. Do the notes, even if they're not particularly well presented. At least if you can read the information and you're doing the revision, you're halfway there. Don't mistake boredom for tiredness. Part of keeping your revision active and maybe working with somebody else via Skype or by having a discussion in a cafe is that you may make it more interesting, and you're less likely then to slip into that fact that you feel that you're tired but actually you're just a bit bored with what you're doing. Switch your modules around a little bit as well. So if you are feeling like you're tired of doing revision on one particular topic, switch around and pick something completely different. Allow plenty of time, and you could use your phone to set yourself reminders and also to give yourself those targets. Set yourself an hour to do a piece of revision, and then when the bell goes, give yourself a break. Take a cup of tea. You could move around as well. It also increases your productivity. Some people find it really helpful to do some physical exercise in between doing revision tasks. It can refresh your brain and allow you to come back with renewed energy. And set study times when you concentrate best. Different people will study at different times. I know I find it much easier to study late at night when it's much quieter and there's less distraction in my house. But other people will find it easier to study first thing in the morning when they feel a bit more alert. Know what suits you best and revise accordingly. And now for those useful links. For text reading and mind mapping software that's free, you can go to this particular website at Eden Skills, and there's some free software there that you can download. There's about 2 or 3 different versions of those types of software, so pick one that suits you best. There's also pronunciation software on howdyousay.com. That's quite useful if when you're revising you're coming across terminology and you don't actually know how to pronounce it, if the words are new or novel. Use How Do You Say for checking the pronunciation of individual words.